Hello guys and welcome back to FATBOSS TV. Once again we're looking at another boss from Ny'alotha with Dark Inquisitor Xanesh.
Yes, this is one of the bosses that you can choose to do fourth in the instance, and it's likely that you'll want to choose this one before any of the others. This fight, just like the previous boss that we covered on the channel, is pretty simple and doesn't have a massive list of mechanics and abilities for you to understand, but it does have one very impressive mechanic that we haven't seen in a raid before. Anyway, let's jump straight in and talk about that most important mechanic.
So over the course of the fight, the boss will slowly gain mana, and at 100% he'll cast Void Ritual, forming 3 zones around him. They explode shortly afterwards, one-shotting the entire raid if they are not soaked. The players that do soak them will be buffed with Void Woken for 40 seconds. This buff allows them to interact with a mechanic that comes immediately afterwards, the Void Orb. 2 portals will spawn in the room, one will spawn with an orb and the other will act as a goal. Shortly afterwards, the orb will fire out, and if it hits any object within the room, whether that be a wall or any obelisk within the room, it will be destroyed and will deal massive raid-wide damage, increasing the damage the next orb explosion deals by 500% and give the boss 50% attack speed for 30 seconds, which essentially is a wipe. The players with Void Awoken, however, can redirect the orb by standing in its way. This causes the orb to fire in the direction that your character is facing. Doing so also debuffs the player with Imminent Doom, which is a 6-second debuff that if it reaches 5 stacks will instantly kill you. So whilst it's possible to have a single player solo the orb and path it all the way towards the portal goal, they are going to need to be careful as they're doing it, as hitting the orb 5 times without a 6-second delay between one of the hits will cause them to die instantly. We opted to instead play it safe and use all 3 players, one to start the initial direction, one to then pass to the striker, who would then do the final shot towards goal. After you've scored, the portal and the orb will despawn and the fight just continues as normal. Players who were Void Woken are now Void Touched, preventing them from doing the job again for 3 minutes, so you're going to need a different set of players each time. We found standing still and allowing the orb to hit you seemed to be a more consistent option than running into it as it arrived, but it's hard to say what the best way is to do it until the boss hits live servers, as the PTR can be laggy at times and there is a bit of a delay. We should also mention that players without Void Woken can also get hit by the orb. This doesn't redirect the orb but instead deals a large amount of damage and knocks you back, so you really need to make sure that you avoid it.
Now, aside from that really important orb job, the boss will spawn obelisks throughout the room. Apart from making the orb job more difficult, they also deal damage and slow players stood within them, so you really do want to try and keep away from them, especially if you're moving from other mechanics. The orb job is also made harder as torment patches will spawn throughout the room frequently. The pattern on these seems to be random, and if you're caught it will deal a massive amount of damage to you, so ideally you want to avoid them at all costs. If you're forced to stand in one of these patches when they're about to explode, just because you need to knock an orb because you're Void Woken, you want to use at least a personal cooldown. For everyone else to watch out for is Soul Flay. This targets around half your raid, pulling their soul from their body and making a visible copy of them. This explodes after 10 seconds, dealing a shit ton of damage to that player, but this damage does fall off with distance. So if your soul is pulled from you, make sure you move away from it before it explodes. We found that being at least 20 to 30 yards away was best, and typically we just moved the entire raid with the boss whenever this mechanic came in. Now for tanks, you'll need to keep an eye on Abyssal Strike. This deals a burst of shadow damage and increases the damage you take from this ability by 25% for 1 minute. It also knocks you back, and if you're knocked off the platform, you're just going to die. On PTR you can taunt on 1, but we don't really feel that this is going to be likely on live, just be ready to taunt whenever your debuff drops. And lastly, for healers, you'll just need to keep the raid topped for the Soul Flay explosions, but the raid also takes consistent damage from Anguish. This damage just hits the raid every 2 seconds.
As for the mythic version of the fight, there are a few changes. To start, the obelisks are far bigger, cutting off multiple paths, which forces you to always take the long way round when it comes to dealing with the orbs. Also, the Imminent Doom stacks can only go to 3 before you're instantly killed rather than 5, and it lasts 12 seconds rather than 6. This just emphasises even more that you really shouldn't have players soloing the orbs. To add, each time an orb hits a player, an Awakened Terror ad spawns. They spam cast Terror Wave, which just fears all players in the room for 3 seconds, so you need to swap to these ads as soon as they spawn and just interrupt them, and kill them ideally before the next ones spawn. Also on Mythic, the Void Touch debuff lasts permanently, so once you've scored a goal, you cannot do that job again and instead someone else is going to have to do it. So in theory your entire raid's going to need to get involved at some point to deal with the orbs. But that's the fight.
Yeah, it's such a cool mechanic and it's going to be a nightmare on Mythic for sure. You're going to have maybe half of your raid with experience of doing it on Heroic, and the moment it's time for the inexperienced players to get involved, you're just going to wipe over and over again until they get it. This is definitely a pug killer, and on Mythic it's probably going to be the first real test in the instance. But aside from, the cool mechanic, the rest of the fight, maybe the pacing is a little bit bit slow. There isn't really too much going on here, but like the previous boss, when you have such an impactful mechanic, maybe it doesn't matter too much. It's supposed to be early on in the instance. It's not supposed to be that difficult. You could argue that the people who aren't assisting with scoring the goals aren't really doing anything, and it can be quite boring. But, it can also be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And laugh at them when they muck it up. It can be quite tense when that mechanic is going on.
One negative to point out, though, is definitely the goal itself, the portal. Its animation doesn't really represent the size of the goal very well, and on more than one occasion, I felt like we had scored, but instead the orb just passed through like one half of the portal.
Yeah, it weren't great.
So on PTR, you had to almost line it up perfectly with the middle of the portal, and I feel like that really shouldn't be the hard part of the mechanic. The hard part should be navigating it around the room, making sure it doesn't hit any of the obelisks or hit any of the walls, and then when you do get to the final shot, it needs to be close to pixel perfect. So they either need to make the goal slightly bigger, or they need to make the animation a little bit more clear on how big the goal area actually is. But aside from that, I don't really have any other complaints for the rest of the fight. I think it's a really good fight, and I'm really looking forward to doing it on Mythic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how some people decide, because the thing is, you can still do the soloing job as well. Some classes are amazing at soloing it. Demon Hunters specifically, very, very good at soloing it. And maybe not so much on Mythic, because you can only hit it twice before you just instantly die. But, you might just have a Demon Hunter in one group and 2 healers, because you don't really want a soloing group to have other DPS in there, because you do 99% less damage while you're void woken. So it's kind of pointless just sitting there nuking the boss doing no damage. So that was something that we were playing around with, having one Demon Hunter solo the entire job and then 2 healers just sitting there not really minding that they're doing no damage anyway. So there might be some things like that you might see pop up just to really pump out your damage on the boss.
But thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this preview, then do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot. And if you'd like to keep up to date with the fight and just have a general better understanding of it before it hits live servers, then do go check out our guide over on Wowhead. As things change and as new strategies are formed, you'll be able to see all of them over there. But again, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching.